the really cool thing about having a really short week is for as much as it does feel longer, it really does feel great when you make it to Friday. Happy Friday, everybody. Let's get to my low, my high, my act of kindness before we begin. Let's see, what's my low? I did kind of procrastinate this morning, getting out of bed. I didn't really need to. Full stop, I procrastinated starting this video. Because, for all intents and purposes, I can't really talk about today's Hot Ones guest without talking about a certain movie that she was in. But I will be getting to that, momentarily. Although, I will say, though, that, speaking of the Hot Ones guest, my high was watching yesterday's episode of Hot Ones. It was fun, it was entertaining, and honestly, I really didn't know this much about this week's Hot Ones guest going in, and I left knowing a whole lot more. And the fact that there's going to be a movie that this guest is going to be coming out in June, well, I'll talk about that a little bit later. What's my act of kindness? What is my act of kindness? Well, I did assist my mom with finding an envelope yesterday she was looking for. I did that. So, right. With all that taken care of, let's talk about this week's episode of Hot Ones, specifically this week's Hot Ones guest, who was Ana de Armas, who is a Golden Globe and Oscar nominated actress, and a person of Cuban descent, which they actually get into in this episode, as well as being in one of the most divisive movies probably of this decade, which was Blonde. Before I get into Blonde, though, I think I'll talk about this week's Hot Ones episode first. I mentioned that Ana de Armas is going to be promoting a movie. It's in the John Wick universe, Ballerina. And the first question Sean asked was coming up with a fighting style for the character that she plays in the movie, as well as being able to keep the the humor that the John Wick movies are known for in terms of over-the-top action. But also, again, the title is Ballerina. I mean, ideally, you'd want to incorporate some sort of ballerina-type movement in what you're doing for a movie like this. Actually, speaking of, I mentioned the Oscars earlier. The second question Sean asked was, for starters, the Academy Award is actually going to add a new category, which is judging action scenes. And considering that Ana de Armas is in the newest John Wick movie come out, Sean asked, how would you judge an action scene worthy of winning, an Oscar? And, you know what? As I was hearing her answer, I'm like, oh my God, that really does make sense. Which is no cuts. I'm sure there are editors out there that know what I'm talking about, but there's no, what you are seeing is one continuous shot from, beginning to end. As well as what you see as being original. Well, by that logic, I can definitely think of several scenes that would fit that category. Specifically, the church scene from, technically there is cuts in that scene, but yeah, the church scene from Kingsman would be pretty great. But that's just me. She talked about the scene that she most dreaded doing in her career was when she had to sing in the movie Eden. She talked about what her last meal would be if it consisted of Cuban food, which is, you gotta have rice and black beans, ropa vieja, tostones, picadillo, and Sean also asked how much, what defines a good mojito? Because mojito, for those of you who don't know, is a tiki drink, a Cuban drink, and how much sugar? You can't have too much sugar in a mojito, and you gotta have white rum, specifically Havana 3. Those are Ana de Armas' words, and I will live by them. They talked about using baby food in the scene where, in the movie Knives Out, she puked on Chris Evans' face. She talked about, actually, this is great. So, one of the reasons why Ana de Armas really has grown in popularity in the last couple of years is she's really worked with a lot of heavy hitters, like Robert De Niro and Daniel Craig. Most recently, Keanu Reeves for Ballerina coming out. And because she's worked with so many prolific actors in the last several years, for the most part, she is number one on everybody's call sheet. Which is, she never thought it would ever be that way. Even her exact words were it's like a pinch me moment, that's incredible. And through those experiences, when making the movies, it's because of that collaboration that you get when several like-minded actors work together to produce something really great. And remember, Ana de Armas is a little bit older than I am. For all intents and purposes, she's my age group. And people in my age group who are in that industry need to know how to lead by example. Those are her words. Well, the whole age group thing was what I just said, but the point is, she's learning to lead by example. I know she got nominated for an Oscar. I wouldn't be surprised she gets nominated again in the near future. Let's see. She talked about how she hates watching herself because she's one of her own biggest critics, and she has to separate herself from the performance that she's watching. And you know what? I relate to that so hard because, full stop, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not the biggest fan of watching myself on camera. I'm just not. I hate how I sound on camera. I don't really have I don't really think I look that. I look halfway. I'm fully dressed. I'll say that much. But I relate to that so hard. It is unbelievable. Well, you know what? I was going to talk about it eventually, but her Mount Rushmore of Marilyn Monroe films, which is Some Like It Hot, The Prince and the Showgirl, Niagara, and Gentlemen Prefer Blondes. Full stop, I really have never seen a Marilyn Monroe film. Growing up, I was a little too young to watch them, and honestly, I didn't. Seriously, I think I was probably in my 20s when I first heard the name Marilyn Monroe. That's how sheltered of a life I've lived as growing up. By the way, it probably comes across that my parents did shield me from a lot of stuff. Yes, they did, but I actually am grateful because I have made some very good decisions in life. So, yeah, for all the flack I'll give my parents, I'll say this: because of how they raised me, I've learned to make some good decisions. She talked about comparing Spanish audiences to American audiences and how the influence of American film is stronger in Europe. And for The Last Dab, considering that she is in a movie that's in the John Wick universe, And in that universe, practically everything you see around you is a weapon you can use. Sean asked Ana de Armas, like, what do you see around you that you can use as a weapon? I mean, she went for the whole taking one of the hot sauce barrels and breaking it and using that as a weapon, which, you know what? It works. So yeah, overall, this was a great episode. I'm glad I got to see Ana de Armas in, on a Hot Ones episode. I think she did really great. She handled her spice pretty well, I thought. Like, she really was saying in the beginning, I can't handle spicy food. She did a pretty good job, I think. I mean, there have been people who've reacted to these sauces far worse than she did. Like, honestly, when I think about it, I'm sure if I saw the reaction, I'd be like, okay, yeah, that did happen. But for the moment, like, I think she did fine. I think she did great handling the sauces on Hot Ones. I mean, obviously, although she gets to the bottom, I'm like, I know this part. And Sean's like, yeah, I know. So, yeah, she was great. Now, I mentioned that Ana de Armas was in one of the most divisive movies of this decade, called Blonde. Now, for those of you who don't know, and I did sort of allude to this earlier, Ana de Armas was nominated for an Academy Award for the film Blonde. If you don't know what Blonde is about, it's basically the movie about Marilyn Monroe, who Sean asked what Ana de Armas' top Mount Rushmore of Marilyn Monroe films are. The reason why that movie gets a lot of is as divisive as it is on the one hand, there are a lot of people who really loved, and I do mean loved, this movie. Due in no small part to Ana de Armas' portrayal of Marilyn Monroe, hence why she got nominated for the Oscar. However, there's also an equally large faction of people who utterly hate the film because it is, anti-feminist, it's exploitative, it paints the industry in a very dark light, in a very dark way. Listen, you gotta remember, Marilyn Monroe lived a really long time ago, when things back in those days were extremely different. I mean, if you look even 100 years ago, well, actually, 100 years ago would be 1925, and just 100 years ago, women had only just been given the right to vote 5 years before. I think that was it. And even then, women in society were still only seen and not heard. Again, listen, we are living in much better times, which is freaking awesome. I love that. And it always brings up the topic that, some people like to ask, because there have been so many, negative forms of media that depict, anti-feminism, racism, in some cases even anti-Semitism. And for all intents and purposes, some of that media still exists today. It's archived and stuff. So the question remains, if it's that bad, why do we have that? Why is that stuff still here when we could just destroy it and be done with it? And believe it or not, it was Whoopi Goldberg, of all people, who said, we actually do need that stuff still around. For one reason only. It's so we can learn from it. Those mistakes are there so we can learn from them. Which, that is quite literally the most logical reason about it that anyone can think of. I mean, the saying goes, those who don't learn from history are doomed to repeat it. I mean, I said earlier, we're living in much better times. We're living in better times because we learned from the mistakes of, even if I went to 50 years ago, things were vastly different. I mean, it was like the 70s. I mean, we were just recovering from the civil rights movement by now. Like, that's crazy to think about. So, keep in mind, I've never seen the movie Blonde. I really had no reason to see it when I saw it had like a 40-something% Rotten Tomatoes. And then I saw like all the praise that Ana de Armas is getting, to the point where she did get nominated for the Oscar. I'm like, what about this movie is so divisive? And then I did some research on the movie, and it's literally what I told you. On the one hand, everybody loved and raved with how great Ana de Armas' performance was. On the other hand, it painted the industry from all those years ago in a very negative, exploitative light, which that's what it was in those times. I mean, personally, again, speaking as, just a dumb white guy, who really is open to change, by the way, yet surprisingly does lean on the right. I'm perfectly okay and open to change, as well as, understanding why things were where they were all that time ago. And at the end of the day, it comes to a level of, if nothing else, the one thing we can all do for each other is just show even the tiniest amount of kindness and respect. That's really all you gotta do. I wish it was as easy as what the Beatles say, all you need is love, but, it takes work. And it's something we all gotta work on. I mean, we're living in much better times. And while it is true, I could just as easily say we have come so very far, but we still have so very far to go. I'm sorry if I'm not really being, listen, for starters, if I said anything controversial, I apologize. I'm just saying this is just what I think and feel. I mean, I hope I didn't say anything bad. I mean, I don't think I did. I'm trying to, basically, if nothing else, I try to speak from a level of respect. And that's really all I can do. I hope you like this video. If you like, subscribe to YouTube channel, follow on social media. As always, I have a healthy video for all you guys watching Joe today. Hope you have a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful Friday. And remember, if you guys want to talk to us, you're here to let me watch you back. Take care and make good choices. 607 all day, baby.